Welcome back. It's the morning show here on ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 AM. We're so happy you're joining us today on the day after Christmas, sometimes the hardest day to get back up and running. But to help you do that and to help all of us really deal with the emotions of others and, of course, ourselves, we are talking to expert, that's right, Dr. Sam Alibrando. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Nice to be here.
Okay, so you have a very interesting thing. It's called the 3 dimensions of emotions that you have put together. It's a 3-dimensional model.
Yes.
Help us out. What exactly is the 3 dimensions of emotions, and how is it important in relationships?
Well, just like there's 3 dimensions of the physical world, obviously, height, width, depth. Through some work I've been doing for over the past 3 decades, there's several psychoanalytic theorists, all independent of each other, kind of came to the same conclusions, and then there's even empirical support for it. There's 3 dimensions, as I like to describe them, of the relationship world. The one is the power dimension. That would be like height. That has to do with our agency and how we impact our world and other people, how we affect them. The second dimension is like width. It's the heart dimension or love dimension, and that has to do with how we relate and need others and how we take care of others and are concerned for others. And then the last, which is the more interesting one and very big thing these days, is the mindfulness or the knowing dimension, which has to do with how we can objectively look. So it has to do with self-control, observing, and managing ourselves that way. And each one of the dimensions can either be positive or negative. For example, a healthy power dimension is we take control of things or we set boundaries. A negative dimension of power is being a bully or being a racist. And the trick is to stay, as I like to call it, above the line, where you're firing on all 3 positive dimensions. And I imagine many of us were tested yesterday when we were having meals with family members we don't always see. And
Right. Well, yeah, I was commenting on that earlier on the show because I was looking at my Facebook feeds, and you see some that are crying now, some people that are upset, some people are saying this is the worst Christmas ever, and you're like, whoa, what happened at your dinner or day?
Exactly.
Did some news come out? A lot of people get broken up during this time. Other people get into relationships, or even some get married at this time. So people's emotions are all over the place. How do you manage that? I just want to tell our listeners that you help organizations. You've done this for the last 35 years. You've helped thousands of people. You help organizations. You help leaders do this. And I think in order to be an amazing leader, you need to know how to connect with each different person and bring out the best in that person.
Yep.
What are some of your tips on that that we can start practicing?
And in fact, if your listeners are interested, I have a free assessment on my website, and they can take it. Okay. And what I help people do is, as my saying is, it's not what we're doing that's wrong or bad, is what we're not doing that's good. And most of us get out of when we get tilted or out of balance, it's usually because 1 or 2 of the dimensions we're not as good in. And if we focus on doing good things out of those dimensions, it puts us back in balance. So let's say as a leader, for example, you're very confident, you're really good in the power dimension, and well, let me say about Miguel, right? I write about him in the book. He was really a very powerful guy and very engaging, but he was really bad in the knowing dimension, which I call yellow. I color code all 3 dimensions. And because he didn't have a good knowing, he would get out of control a lot. He would lose his temper. He would scream at employees. And when I coached him, I helped him in the mindfulness dimension, how to take a breath, sleep on it that night. Don't react right away. And when he did that, he got back in the balance. And that would be the case for any of us, that figure out where we go out of balance and then practice the part of the dimensions that we're not doing well enough. And that brings us back in the balance. So whether it's with our children or employees, if we do that, we will go into what we call these days emotional intelligence.
Okay, well, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, because emotional IQ, oddly enough, and I've said this in quite a few times, and some people, they have not been taught it. Some don't have it. Like there are those that are just emotionally on. Like they have worked through that for whatever reason. Like they are in tune with others. They know how to bring out the best in others. And then there are those that, because of their own emotions, and I find it always results with the own, like in the moment that you just said, that person is used to reacting, right? They are a reactor of things. That's the person probably going to block you on Facebook when you get in a fight and then be like, oh, shoot, what did I do, right?
Yep.
And I know, because this used to be me. I used to be a very reactor. I still have to work on it. I have to work on the mindfulness part, to be very frank and blunt. And so when this came through, I said, okay, I know I'm going to learn a lot about this, because there are people in your life that challenge that, right?
Yep.
And now, how I want to go back to something that you said, very important, and it's really important in relationships. And people don't understand this, and I've helped others understand it. But maybe you have a better way of sharing this. Drawing lines in the sand, so to speak. What's the best way to do that, and why is that so important for people to do that in any relationship?
Well, and that would be in the power or the red dimension, and that's if by drawing a line in the sand you mean keeping a boundary, right? So boundary. You're going to talk to your mother on the phone, but only 10 minutes. She'd keep you on there for 2 hours, but you say, "Mom, I got to go." Right? That's keeping a boundary, or saying no to a client or a friend or whatever, right? That's
a lot of people have a hard time saying no. I have a friend that I recently talked to, and I'm like, oh, this person says yes to everything, and but like he doesn't know how to have boundaries. But
exactly, blues or the moving toward or the heart dimension says yes to everything. They are agreeable. That's part of being in that dimension. The red dimension is the part of us that says, is this going to work for me or not? Or how do I protect myself? So for some people, that's a harder challenge, right? And for them, they have I have a phrase, conscious and intentional. So you have to be conscious and intentional. I worked with a woman who was a real powerhouse, and every time I would relate to her, I'd end up becoming super agreeable, and I'd lose my own perspective. So when I practiced being conscious and intentional, I went into the next meeting with her with my talking points, and then I had to keep going back to my talking points. It's the broken record technique. You may have heard of that.
Yeah.
And then when I finally held my ground intentionally, the whole dynamic changed. And then we had a very constructive conversation. So for people, you have to be going into the dimension you're the weakest in at any given moment, because we're different with different people. You need to go in conscious and intentional to do the healthy aspect of that dimension. Well, again, on my website, I have what I call a relationship circle, and that people can see examples of positive and negative behaviors in each of the dimensions.
Okay, our listeners already are asking. In fact, on Facebook Live, they're saying, "What is the link? I need the link." What's the link to your website? The
link is the subtitle of the book. So it's www.power-heart-mindfulness.com.
I'm sorry, I'm typing it in right now. I want to see what's on there. Okay, so power-heart-mindfulness.com. I didn't even know you could use hyphens. That's a good lesson to myself. And evidently you have a good mailing list there. So what else do you send out on your mailing list?
Well, if for the mailing list, people get notices of any blogs I'm putting up and that kind of stuff. Any new entries, and then the free giveaways, the test, the free interpersonal triangle test, and the relationship circle.
Okay, so I'm going to take this. I can't wait to check this out. Our listeners already are very happy that you have joined us. I want to just point this one out as well. Now, as parents, okay, because there are some kids out there that can challenge the parents, right? How do you? What's a tip that you could give a parent, that might have a child that's a little testing on their nerves? They're teenagers. How do they bring balance back to that?
No, and take note that teenagers can fall into any one of the three dimensions. The one you're talking about is what I would call the defiant. There is then the compliant teenager, who's a goody two-shoes, and that's not always healthy either. And then there's the avoidant or the detached. This is the kid who stays up in his room or her room and has hardly any friends and won't talk to you, right? So we can be reactive in any of the three dimensions, but the one you're referring to is the toughest. At least up front, it's the hardest, and that's the defiant. And I have a rule is positive, they're negative. So if they're defiant, you have to use your own power dimension and set good boundaries, not in a hostile way, not in a way that is hurtful or attacking, but in a good boundary way where you're calm. You said the secret. How do we move from reactivity to what I call in the book responsibility, where we're able to respond rather than react? So we have to be calm. That's the number one thing in working with any type of teenager, is for us to be calm. I have my three top principles for managing a difficult person, and a defiant adolescent would be a difficult person. And my first three rules of engaging a difficult or managing a difficult person is, first one is manage yourself first. The second rule is manage yourself first. And the third rule is manage yourself first.
Okay. That is so true, because a lot of parents let go of they are reactionary. They're like, the kids go, well, why? And they're like, because I said so, that's why. Like, they're just done with it, right? And
a parent is going to react in one of the dimensions. They're going to comply and give the kid whatever they want, or they're going to avoid the child, and or they're going to have a out and out war.
Yes.
In a reactive way, as opposed to a calm, strong, clear, deliberate way.
Oh, very interesting. Well, I want to say, unfortunately, we're out of time, but really quick, for those that want to go get your book, they can get it on Amazon. They could get it at Barnes & Noble. Where else can they visit? Can you give out that link one more time?
Sure. It's www.power-heart-mindfulness.com.
Awesome. Well, I want to say a very big thank you for joining us here on the show. I can't wait for people to check that out. I'm going to go do that test and sign up for all of your newsletters. And thank you so very much for joining us here on The Morning Show.
Thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I want to say thank you as well to the listener. We hope we started off your week off well. Remember, find the balance of power, heart, and mindfulness in all your relationships. The three dimensions of emotions. Check it out right now in bookstores everywhere. Brett, who's coming up next?
Clark Howard's coming up next. Good night, everybody.